guys, welcome back to my craft room and back to Crafty Christmas. So this one is kind of like, it's a very simple project, but oh my word is it time consuming. It took me, I believe, 4 hours. Oh my gosh. But it's a pretty full-size blanket. So if you did just like a lap blanket, it would take you a whole lot less time. And I even left one row without the pom-poms. So it's a very time-consuming project. Maybe put on a Hallmark movie and get some sugar cookies and hot cocoa, because it's gonna be a long one. But anyways, really, this one is going to be a very good project for somebody who really loves to pamper themselves or should be pampering themselves. It would be great with the self-care packet, or even maybe like a little box of chocolates, something else that we're going to be making soon, hopefully, fingers crossed. But really, this one is so cute, and you can really make it your own by choosing your own kind of blanket. So if your person is not very into pink, then of course don't get pink and pink yarn. But you could do maybe purple with purple yarn. Oh, that would be cute. Or even blue. That would be good too. So I have seen these kinds of blankets around for quite a while, and I've always wanted to try DIYing it, and I don't know if it's worth it. I think that it's definitely cool to see it, you know, like, oh yeah, I made that. Plus they kind of charge outrageous prices for these, so, but I did get my yarn at Walmart, and I think they were $2.50 a skein. And I got 2, and I ended up using all of it. So, and then the blanket was $2.50 at Walmart as well. So, I mean, I think that's cheaper than some of the blankets I've seen before. And it's very soft and warm. As I was creating it, I had it on my lap, and it was very nice. But getting into the nitty-gritty, really all you need is a blanket and yarn and your fingers. And then either a needle and thread or hot glue. So to make it, all you have to do are make your pom-poms. And all I did was just wrap I actually used a chunky yarn. You could use a very thin yarn, you know, the cheap acrylic, but I love the look of the chunky yarn. You don't have to use as much, like, because if you use a really thin yarn, you're going to end up having to double, pretty much, to make sure your pom-pom is very full. So I really loved this yarn. And it was very easy to work with. Whenever I scrunched or, you know, rolled it up, it looked so cute as a pom-pom. So I really would recommend getting the chunkier yarn, even though it is a tad more expensive. So all I did was just wrap the yarn around my fingers 25 to 30 times, depending on how full you want it. Now, depending on how big you want your pom-poms to be is where you're going to place your yarn when you wrap it. I placed it right in between my palm and my fingers so that I would get the largest pom-pom size. If you wanted to, you could just do your 3 fingers. That will give you a smaller size. You could do around, you know, 2 fingers. That would give you like a really small size. So either, you know, depending on how big, and then that's also going to depend on how much yarn you use as well. But I wanted mine to be huge and very fluffy. So I did 30 wraps around my finger, I kept the end of the piece of yarn, uh, the first wrap, right below my palm. It was just hanging there, and then as you wrap, it stays there. And then when you finish off your pom pom, you're gonna wrap around your hand, and then you're gonna have your finishing strand on the other side of your palm, and then cut it off about the same length. And then you're going to cut off a strand. I started out with a big strand because I really wanted to make sure that I had enough room to tie my knots. But as you get more comfortable with it, you can go a little shorter with your strand. Just cut off a strand, whatever is comfortable for you. And then you're going to put it on a flat surface, and then take off your pom-pom with you, like, very carefully so that you maintain that circle, and then place it right in the center of that strand, and then tie it in the center. And I did 3 or 4 knots just to make sure it was really in there. And you're going to want to tie it very tightly. You don't want any room for it to wiggle or move, because you really want your pom-pom to stay tight. You don't want it to unravel on you, because that is just the worst thing. Getting all the way to the end and then it just whoop. I had that happen to me the first time I made pom-poms, and it was so frustrating. But luckily I got over it, and I was like, okay, I just have to keep going and make sure, every step is just right, just to make sure that it doesn't unravel on me. So you're gonna, make sure your ends are really, or your extra string is really tight around the center of your little bundle. Then you're going to want a box or a bag of some kind. You do not want to do this just on your table. You could even just do it over the trash can, and you're still going to make a mess. Even if you have that precaution, it's still going to be a mess. And you are going to take your scissors and make sure that you cut each loop individually and do your first layer first. Once you get done with that, you can do your bottom layer. Don't try to do it all at once, because then your pom-pom strands aren't going to be the same length. And you're going to need to do a lot more trimming. So once you get all of the loops cut in half, then you're going to kind of give it a really good roll around in your hands, and then you're going to start like flattening it just to make sure that you can see all around. And you're going to see some strands that are a lot longer than the others, and you're going to start shaping it. Just make sure to, pick a length and stick with it, and don't go any shorter than that length. And try not to go, make sure your length that you're picking isn't too short, because if you do, that's going to give it a lot more wiggle room to unravel, and you don't want it unraveling. You don't want to put all that time and effort into it and then just see it unravel because you cut a little too much. So, I feel like there's a pretty good guideline when you kind of smush it of where you should be cutting. So just kind of look through that, and you should be able to see where everything should be cut and what shouldn't be cut. And then if you need to, you can flatten it down the other side and make sure on the other side that you're good as well. And then that's going to give you a really great size. You can also do it like kind of randomly, and it'll look good too. Or if you want it to be like a really uniform pom-pom, then you're going to really want to make sure that everything is in that same shape and same size. So, trying to think. I really had like pinpoints of what I needed to cover, because some of this is very easy to kind of get wrong. Gosh, why am I blanking? It's because I want to start moving on to the next step, but I want to make sure that I think everything I've said is said with that point. So on to actually putting your pom-poms onto your blanket. I spaced mine out with the pattern of the blanket, but you could do, 4 inches, 5 inches every pom-pom, And it kind of depends on you and how many pom-poms you want to make. That's the real thing. And you can hot glue it, you can sew it, or well, yeah, hand sew, and you can do both. I went with both because I really wanted it to be on there. Because when I did my flick test, which I, just flicked the blanket to make sure that my pom-poms were on there, some of them were not staying on right. I think that I must have missed the center of the pom-pom, and then it just kind of fell apart. So I decided to just give myself that extra wiggle room just to make sure I was safe, and I just hot glued the edges of the pom-pom down to the blanket. But to ensure that you are, sewing it correctly, that it will stay put, you're going to want to find that knot where you knotted your pom-pom in half. You're going to want to put your needle right through that, or even around the the yarn that you had tied. You want to make sure you do the middle where that secureness is. You want to do that. And then that is going to ensure that it's on there really nicely. I only had 2 pom-poms come apart. Not come apart, but that wouldn't sit nicely, so that's why I did the hot glue, just to make sure I was safe. But that is your pom-pom blanket. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you're having a crazy day. Good crazy, not bad crazy, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys!